IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode on the Musafir Stories. Before we get on with today's episode, a quick shout out to some of our listeners who have written in with feedback. Ram Krishna, Tarun, Rohit, Shahid and Harsha. Thank you so much for all the support and love. Also, a quick shout out to the brothers Vishnu and Shankar for their timely help with the podcast production. You can check out their podcast at The Writer and Geek Show, available wherever you listen to your podcasts at. As for today's episode, we speak with Ayush Kumar as he takes us to one of the very underrated cities in India. Let's jump onto the episode and find out more. So with that introduction, I'd like to welcome Ayush Kumar, a very dear friend and an acquaintance from one of the heritage walks we did in Bangalore. Ayush, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and welcome.
Thank you, Seth. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you so much. It's been a while since we met on one of these walks, but it's good to be talking to you. The intro I gave about you, Ayush, is quite short and sweet. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you?
Myself, Ayush, and I'm native to Odisha, but I have been in Namma Bengaluru since 8 years now. So I came here for my education in engineering, and I fell in love with the city, no doubt about it. I've been here since 8 years, and now currently having a job in an IT profile as a software engineer, as most of the people do have in Bengaluru.
Of course.
So, and my personal hobbies are I love traveling and do a bit of photography, not in a professional level though. But I have been doing photography since 1.5 years or 2 years in a serious scale and trying to put my work on Instagram.
Okay.
So, yes. So this is how the journey started. And once I became independent, so the traveling fever stood on me, and I have been traveling a lot. I have been in this weekend in Bengaluru, but most of the time I won't be. So yeah, that's how I thought I could present myself and give a bit of an idea about my state and my city.
Wonderful. And yeah, it's great actually. Like Ayush and I went on a number of walks together around Malleshwaram, I think was the first walk that we met through one of these walks organized by Sahapedia. We have spoken a little bit about Ayush, but why don't you tell us where you're taking us and our listeners to today?
So today I'm going to take everyone to the city of temples and the capital of the state of Odisha, Bhubaneswar. So Bhubaneswar is a city which is a mingle of old history as well as the modernity. So you might land up being surrounded by maybe 10 or 20 temples at one place and surrounded by suddenly with a concrete jungle. So that's what makes Bhubaneswar special. Long back in the history, there were over 2,000 temples in the city. And the city is not a very big city though. It is a tier 2 city which is categorized by the government of India.
Right.
But according to the archaeological survey, it is ranked one of the highest density archaeological sites present in a single location. So basically Bhubaneswar can be again divided into two parts. So one is the old Bhubaneswar, which is the tourist hub of the state of Odisha, and the other is the modern part, and which has been basically established after 1948.
Absolutely. And yeah, also very unique in terms of just the confluence of even the religions, I think, right? Because you have monuments related to everything from Hinduism to Buddhism and Jainism, which is also very unique, I thought. And like you mentioned at the beginning, the city itself, again, that also is like a coming together of literally different ages, right? Because on one hand, you have the old Bhubaneswar, the old town, like is popularly called. And then adjacent, you have the new city, right? Or which is the planned city. And
Yes, yes.
that's more on the lines of one of the newer cities like, say, Chandigarh or Jamshedpur, which is planned. So that's like
Yes.
completely different. And just a little bit of a history, since we were speaking of Bangalore, relating or comment to the both of us. Otto Koenigsberger, I think, right? The famous architect.
Yes.
He was the one who designed Bhubaneswar as well. And some of his like planned towns include Chandigarh. I can't remember if it was Chandigarh, but Jamshedpur definitely. So he's done that, and even some popular buildings in Bangalore, because he was, I think, the chief architect also at some point of the state of Mysore. So that
Yes, he
way,
was.
the popular buildings in Bangalore, like the town hall, for example, was designed by Otto Koenigsberger, as well as a few other buildings. That's a little bit of a connection. I thought I'd call that out at the beginning itself. But go on and take us through Bhubaneswar and the different things it has to offer. Very, very underrated, and really surprises me why it's not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right?
Yes. So Bhubaneswar is totally relatable to the history of Odisha, and it was in initial days or in historical days called as the Ekamra Kshetra. So in Odia, Ekamra means temple. So in Hindi, we can call this the Mandiro Ka Shahar or Mandir Nagari. And Odia, it is called as the Ekamra Kshetra. Again, Bhubaneswar is, as you mentioned, the confluence of many religions, especially Hinduism and especially Shaivism, so people who follow Shiva.
Right.
The others are Buddhism and Jainism, which actually have been supposed to be a beginning point of in the initial stages from the city of Bhubaneswar.
Yep.
So Bhubaneswar comes from its name called Bhubaneswar. And it has a very significant relation with God or Shiva. So
Right.
Shiva is associated with the Lord of all the three worlds which are present in our universe. So that's how it is called Bhubaneswar. So Bhubaneswar gets its name from that part. And historically, I think every child in India would remember the name called Kalinga War.
Yep.
So how Kalinga War is famous was when the famous ruler Ashoka the Great attacked Odisha. So he turned the entire Odisha's river called Daya, which is near Bhubaneswar, into blood. It was completely blood-soaked, and the entire place was so miserable that he himself couldn't bear the scene. So he had to, he had a different kind of an change in himself. What happened is he changed himself to a Buddhist. So that's how Ashoka left the war rage which he used to have, and he used to conquer the entire India.
Exactly. I don't know how the school curriculums are now, but kids of the 80s, 90s, we all had the Mauryan Emperor Ashoka, right? A lot of his exploits and everything. And like you also rightly called out, that the Kalinga War is something that's one of the significant events even in history. Goes back to, I think, the 2nd or the 3rd century BC. Over 1 million soldiers or lives were lost basically in that war, is what it's believed. And like you even mentioned, right, the whole river turned red with blood. And that's when like he embraced Buddhism, and he kind of changed from Chandashoka to Dhammashoka. So basically,
Yes.
right from the cruel one to the one who embraced Buddhism. So that's the significant bit of history, and it's really great. And if people remember, I think Shah Rukh Khan made it a little popular with that movie as well, Ashoka.
Yes, true. He did. And actually, the shooting or the spots which was covered was the real spots in Bhubaneswar as well. So some of the
them?
important places. Yes, some of the important places.
Yeah. So it's great. But yeah, carry on. I'm sorry I interjected, but carry on with the important temples of Bhubaneswar that you were going to call out.
So the first and the most significant temple, and truly called as one of the gems in Odisha's Kalinga architecture, is the Lingaraj temple. So Lingaraj temple is again a temple which is devoted and worshipped for Shiva. However, the temple is important temple in Odisha because it is one of the few temples in India where Shiva and Vishnu are worshipped together. So there are two different sects in Hinduism. One is who follows Hinduism, like one who follows the Shaivism, and one who follows the Vaishnavism. So here you find a culminating point. And how Lingaraj temple marks its significance is, it is probably one of the oldest temples, and it is the largest and the biggest temple in Bhubaneswar. And together Bhubaneswar is called as in the Golden Tribuja, or the Swarna Tribuja as we call it in Oriya, or the Golden Triangle. Lingaraj temple marks one of the points in Bhubaneswar along with Puri and Konark as the Golden Triangle of Eastern India. So Lingaraj temple's other significances, it has a linga, so Shiva is worshipped in the form of a linga. It's called the Harihara Linga, where you will find half of the linga to be devoted, or to be like we say in Hindi, samarpit to Shiva, and the other to be samarpit to Vishnu. So that's how Lingaraj temple is important. As well as Lingaraj temple is one of the highest structures in Bhubaneswar. So once you take up a flight from Bhubaneswar, probably once you look down, you get to see so many historical significant points, and Lingaraj is truly a spectacular view from sky. And apart from that, Lingaraj temple is situated besides an important pokri, as we call in Oriya. Pokri is something which is called Kalyani in South India, or the pond of the river, pond of the temples, as in the historical times our country always had a pond next to its temple, so we could perform and carry the water for its religious and spiritual daily practices in the temple. So it's called as the Bindu Sagara. So how Bindu Sagara again is important comes from the point that Bindu Sagara is told to have waters from each and every holy river of India, each and every holy waterfall of India. So many people believe that before going to the temple or the Lingaraj temple, they take a dip in the water to get rid of the sins which they have done in their life, and just to have a spiritual feeling. So that's how Bindu Sagara is important. And one great part about Odisha tourism now is that they have renovated the entire structure around Lingaraj temple with a very modern and very clean look. So if someone literally goes to Lingaraj temple and starts walking around the temple, he would truly be lost into the ancient times of Kalinga architecture and the Kalinga Empire.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the very standout features of the many temples, like the ones you'll be discussing in a few minutes as well, is that the architecture, right? It quite stands out. The Kalingan architecture, it stands out from, say, the Dravidian architecture that we have in most temples in South India, or even the Nagara style of architecture of the North Indian temples. I mean, at a high level, it might be similar, but in terms of the intricacies and how the Shikhara is built out, right? The spires and the towers and everything, it's very different, and very unique. Yeah.
So Kalinga architecture is basically known for its Vimana. So Vimana is something which is as called as the tower of the temple, which we see in generally the towers of South Indian temples in Tamil Nadu specifically. Yep. So those are those are very, very tall in Tamil Nadu. Odisha doesn't have that tall ones, but yes, Odisha has very intricately designed temples. So especially if you go to Odisha's temple, you will have three different parts. One is the welcoming part, or the entrance of the temple. The second will definitely be called as a Jagamohan. So Jagamohan is an important part of the temple where daily practices of the temple are done, where people just go and put their
offerings.
Worshippings and the offerings. So that's called as the Jagamohan. And then it is called as the Sanctum Sanctorium, which is the inner sanctum where the god is generally present. Yep. So that's how the Kalingan architecture is. And Kalingan architecture is yes, it has influenced, I would say, the Nagara style of architecture. And if you go to the northern part or the northern districts of Andhra Pradesh, which is in present day Andhra Pradesh, especially the districts of Palasa and Srikakulam and even Visakhapatnam, so those were anciently a part of the Kalingan architecture or the Kalingan Empire. Correct. So if you go to any of the temples, even there is a very famous temple in Visakhapatnam called as the Shimachalam temple. So that has in Kalingan architecture. It doesn't have the Dravidian architecture at all. So that's how Dravidian architecture, like Kalingan architecture, was significant long back, and it has actually influenced a lot of architectures in different parts of our country.
Yeah, definitely. So we will share some pictures as well, so listeners can have a look at how unique these temples are and how beautiful they are. But carry on. After the Lingaraj temple, which other temple would you like to call out?
So I would like to point and give a name about a very small temple which is called as the Mukteshwar temple. Probably Mukteshwar temple is not that huge temples of Odisha like the other huge temples of Puri or Lingaraj. It is a small temple, but it is truly one of the spectacular temples of Odisha. So what makes Mukteshwar temple special is it's known as the gem of Kalingan architecture, or the temple which represents the Kalingan architecture in its highest forms. So if you go to the Mukteshwar temple, literally each and every inch of the temple is so intricately designed and so beautifully presented that maybe I think you can take thousands of pictures and still you will not be, I do not know how to term it. I think you will be lost in its world totally. Being a small temple, it is totally beautiful, and there is an important significance of this temple as well. So generally in Odisha temples, we will not find an arch, which is like an entrance arch, but this particular temple has an arch. In Oriya we call it as an Torana. So this temple is one of the few temples where you will find that the arch is present, which is decorated with again several beautiful Odissi dance postures. Once someone is really interested in going to Mukteshwara temple, I would personally suggest him to go in the months of December when there's a festival called as the Mukteshwar Dance Festival. So it's a specific festival which is again totally for showcasing the Odisha's architecture as well as Odisha's art form, especially the Odissi dance. So Odissi is one of the oldest dance forms again in the entire country, and probably as per the archaeological beliefs, it is told to be the oldest dance forms. It is not similar to Bharatanatyam from the south, neither it is similar from the Kathak of the north. It has a different significance and it represents water. So if you go to any Odisha's temple, you will find that the temples are not that sharp. It is always very round in shape, and probably to look it is very intricate and very soft to look at. It will not have sharp features to it. So that's how Odisha's temple have been presented. So yes, do visit the Mukteshwara temple in the month of December and early January to get a touch and feel of how Odisha was and is in the present day and the future as well.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to add, like, to your point, right, about the Torana or the entrance arch. It's very, very intricate and something that you perhaps won't find in some of the other temples of Odisha or Bhubaneswar that you have called out. And this temple is believed to be like a 10th century temple, and like most other temples, also made of sandstone, right? Usually red or yellow sandstone. So that way also it's like stands out quite a bit. Much smaller compared to Lingaraj temple, but really, really beautiful in terms of the architecture. So after this, where would you like to take us?
So the next temple which I would like you to visit or take you to would be the famous Rajarani temple of Bhubaneswar. So Rajarani temple is something which specifically does not mention the dance forms of Odisha or the Odissi dance forms or traditional classical dance forms. It is a temple which is basically showing the love. So you would find several intricate postures and embracing couples present in the temple premises. So this temple again is present in the old part of Bhubaneswar, or the old town as we call in the city. And again, the Rajarani temple doesn't have a very picturesque and very intricate architecture inside the temple. When I visited, I could see that the outside of the temple was too intricate to visit and too intricate to see, but the inside of the temple was quite plain, not like the other Puri temple or the Lingaraj temple. However, the Rajarani temple is itself is a very different temple because of the postures of the couples which are present there. You can get a feel of the olden times, how they wanted the young people to learn different things from the temples. So temples were not just a place to worship. So temples were something in the olden Bharat or India which used to be the learning centers. So you would find temples to teach you adulthood. It would give you stories about Ramayana, Mahabharata as well, and it would also give you the values which you people have to learn in our olden times when we grow old. So that's how the level grows in a temple. So Rajarani temple, I think, comes in the adult phase when people actually get to see different embracing couples there. And another important significance I would like to note about Rajarani temple is it organizes a specific music festival in the month of January, just after the Mukteshwara dance festival. This is a music festival. So you can get to listen to the typical Carnatic music or to the famous Hindustani music as well from the north. And we in Odisha have a different style of music called as the Odra Magadi music. So people do not know about it. But if we had to name 3 different forms of music which should be present in India or which are present in India, the famous ones definitely are the Hindustani and Carnatic, but the other is the Odri Magadhi music. So you can get to listen some of the music in this music festival, definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant. And yeah, like you mentioned, popularly known as the love temple, right? For all of those embracing couples that you see. And I believe it's not a functional or a live temple, right? So there's no deities here that are praised, even though it's believed that it's a Shiva temple or a Shaivite temple like most other temples. And the other little bit of trivia I saw while researching or looking up about Rajarani temple is that even though you might think it is about a Raja and a Rani type of a thing, locally the sandstone, the yellow and the red and yellow sandstone is actually called as Rajarani in Odia, I believe. And that's how it gets a temple. Again, I'll have to verify my sources there, but the etymology derives back to the red and yellow sandstone rather than to Raja Rani, which one might think is the king and the queen. So just a little bit of trivia to throw in there, but
It's very
great to know how it's different from even the previous 2 temples you spoke about, right? So it's just because we are talking about temples, it doesn't mean like all of them are similar or anything. And it's only scratching the surface at this point. Like we said at the beginning as well, that there's thousands of temples in Odisha, and it's only a handful of the important ones in Bhubaneswar that we are calling out. And any other temple you'd like to call out?
So there is another temple which I would like to just mention would be the Parsurameshwara temple, which is again present in the Mukteshwara temple's complex, which is nearby Mukteshwara temple, and it is probably a 7th century temple, and it is thought to be one of the oldest temples in Odisha. It is even older than the Lingaraj temple. So again, if you go to the Parsurameshwara temple, those are not very huge and very, very big temples, but he is highly decorative, and each temple has a different architectural form of the Kalingan architecture. So definitely when a person visits Mukteshwara, he shouldn't be leaving out Parsurameshwara temple. So I would like to specifically mention this. Yes. Yes, Saif.
Yeah. And the other temple also, I don't know if you'd like to touch upon, is I found very unique in terms of the prasad or the food that's offered, right? The Ananta Vasudev temple. I don't know if you'd like to touch upon that.
Yes, so the Ananta Vasudeva temple is just present besides the Lingaraja temple in the old town of Bhubaneswar. So Ananta Vasudeva temple is supposed to be worshipped before the Lingaraj temple, as some people say. So again, Vasudev typically, I think Vasudev means Vishnu's form.
Yep.
So the temple, yes, Vishnu. So the temple is popularly known in Bhubaneswar for its delicious typical Odia temple food, which is offered daily to the deity present there. And one can get to buy typical Odia food from the temple, which would be pure veg with like it will not have any onions, any garlic. It will be the temple food which is offered to God every day. Some portion of it is kept outside, and that is offered to the devotees and the people who would like to put a small amount and take have a beautiful meal during the lunch, specifically in the Ananta Vasudeva temple. So that's how it is known across Bhubaneswar. And in the recent days, in many of the travel shows which have covered Odisha, they have never missed Ananta Vasudeva temple. So I would like to mention some of the typical Odia dishes which you could definitely go ahead. Yes. So these are some of the typical Odia dishes which are from the temples of our or the kitchens of our temples from our state. So something is there called as the khichdi, so which is known as khichdi in Hindi. So we call it as khichdi. So it is something which is made up of again moong, and there is a very typical Odia dish called as dalma. So how South India is known for its sambar. So Odisha consumes dalma in a regular basis, which is nothing but a wholesome food like tempered with different spices and all vegetables you can imagine is put into dal, and it is simmered and cooked. It is very healthy to consume, and people in Odisha love eating rice and sweets. So I cannot miss out khiri or payas or payasam as it is called in South India, and North India calls it as kheer.
Sure.
We call it khiri or payas. So this is again a typical Oriya way of making kheer. So if you go to Odisha, there is a significant difference which you find it from the Bengali sweet specifically. Typically, Odisha and Bengal has a lot of similarities, if I would say, in the terms of culture, in the terms of language, in the terms of how they worship. But when it comes to the sweets, our sweets are not whitish. It is all brownish in texture. And there is a very beautiful resemblance why it is brown. So if you see the face of Jagannath, he has big black eyes. So that's how each and every sweet in Odisha is little round and little brownish to signify the eyes of Jagannath. So that's how Odisha's food is derived, and each and every family in Odisha tries making food which has been derived from the temples. However, there's a very important significance of the temple's food in Odisha. Our temple food doesn't include or doesn't take considerations of any of the foreign vegetables and fruits which were not native to India. So, you will never find potatoes or aloo, as we call it in Oriya. And you will not generally find tomato as well, because that's not from India. So, you will find, instead of that, you will find sweet potatoes. So, yam, which is typical to our Indian culture, imli or tamarind, which is typical to our Indian land, our Indian subcontinent. So, that's how, again, they have tried conserving and preserving the food to historically available dishes and available fruits of vegetables in our ancient times.
Exactly. So, I was literally blown away by this, and especially how, like you said, right? A lot of the local dishes are actually derived and inspired by the dishes served or offered in temples. And it's great that like you have Make in India. This is like a Make in Odisha type of thing, where there's more of a there's focus on what's available, right? Rather than try and go out and source vegetables or the things from outside. Whatever is grown locally, that way even you're supporting the local farmers and the agriculturists who are growing this.
True,
so it was a great revelation for me also when I learned about this. And yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of popular sweet dishes also. There was I know not long ago there was this controversy about the GI tag for Rasgulla, right, between Bengal and Odisha.
So as I am from Odisha, I would like to support my Odia version. However, our version is not similar to the one which you generally find across India. Like I mentioned, Odisha is a hidden gem in India. So it is such a state which has not been touched upon much, which is not much focused on the media as well, except the cyclones, as everyone knows. So the sweet of Rasgulla, especially as Bengalis call it as Rasgulla and we call it as Rasgulla. Little difference in the language, not much though. But how the difference here is the white Rasgulla, which is throughout seen across the country, is not eaten at all in Odisha. Our Rasgulla is typically again brown in color, and it is because of the caramelization of the sugar a lot. And our sweets are such that if you consume one, it's enough. So it's not like you can keep on hogging or having so much of sweets. We cannot have that. Oriya sweets are a little heavier on their side. They are not sponge kind, or they are not that texture wise, they are very different. So that's how the controversy was. Yes, however, in the ancient texts of Jagannath temple, as most of the sweets and food of Odisha has been derived from, states that Rasgulla or Rasgulla was given as an prasad to the Lord Jagannath since around 800 years now. So that's how Odisha government was having a conversation with the Bengal's government that yes, we deserve it to be given to us. However, both the states were given equal opportunities and they were given their GI tags for both.
Yeah, I think that was the right way to go about it as well. I think also, and like you said, they're also not the same thing, right? Even texture wise, like the Bengali Rasgulla, like Bangla Rasgulla is what
Bangla
it was.
Rasgulla, and this is Odisha's Rasgulla.
Correct, and that's quite chewy as well, right? And white in color, like you said. compared to Odisha's rasgulla, and it's great that that was sorted out. And
Yes.
we
And
can
in
have more
a
sweets.
healthy way.
Nobody's complaining. Like we can have more sweets. But yeah, that was something about the GI tag for the rasgulla as well. Now, talking a little bit more about GI tags, right? Since we are here, would you also like to touch upon the famous art forms in Odisha that have been GI tagged as well?
Yes. So one of the famous art forms, I think I would like to say a painting, which is called as the Patachitra. So Pata is in Oriya translates to the palm, and Chitra or Chitra, as in we call it in Oriya, is the art. So it is an art form or in painting in which the painting is made on a palm leaf or on a cloth, which may be a cotton cloth or some kind of a typical cloth which is available. So this GI tag is given specifically for the village of Raghurajpur, which is near Bhubaneswar. Why is it called as an artisan's village? Again, is because each and every family or house in Raghurajpur has an artist in their house. So that's a great part about it. Apart from that, some of the other GI tagged products or different art forms which I would like to say is the typical Bomkhai sari, which is from Odisha. Again, that's from the western part of Odisha. And now the recent Rasgulla has been given. And there is when we were speaking about sweets, I forgot to mention about one of the, I think the most tastiest, and I think it is a very different sweet called as a Chena Podo. So Chena Podo is a sweet, unlike any other sweets in India. It is, I think, the only sweet in India which is caramelized by burning it in coal. So and it is prepared inside a leaf which is called as a shalapatra. So sal is a tree which grows everywhere in Odisha. Odisha is an highly forested state or a mountainous valley state. So you would find sal to be growing everywhere. So our Odisha has an important significance as well as of the tribal. So you would find the temples also to have a tribal significance, like Lord Jagannath's total face. It is, or the how the deity looks. You cannot expect that kind of an art or that kind of an form to look in any other temples or any other deity in India. So Odisha is such a state which is highly tribal influenced, right from its religious cultures, right in its dance forms. So there is another very famous dance form and the only classical dance form from the state, which is called Odissi. I would not like to say it is a GI tagged or something. It is the only classical dance form from the state, and it is, as I mentioned, it is one of the most historical dance forms. Again, it has again a significance to the temples, because Odissi is a dance which showcases the different postures which you would definitely be finding in the temple architecture in Odisha. So whenever you find a dancing woman, that is a form and a step in Odissi dance. So everything has been taken out from that. So that's how Odissi is significant to the temple and to the culture of Odisha.
Absolutely, and so many different layers, like right from the art forms to the food, like the cuisines, to the temples, to the music, everything, right? There's so many different levels to the art and the culture, and even going back to how you said about the tribal influence on the state as well, right? The different tribes that have been there as well. So very different from what we find in a lot of the other popular states or monuments within India too, right? So that's what I think is so endearing and so special about India also, in one way, that we have so much diversity.
Yes. So Odisha contributes, I think, significantly to the diversity of our country, from being totally, I think, independent of any foreign influence, as I was mentioning. So you would get to see that when you visit the state, you would be not finding any architectural significance to the Mughals, as I mentioned, in the north, or not from the south as well. But it has typically independent presence in the country.
Oh, most definitely. And also to quickly touch upon, right, I know we've spoken quite in depth about the temples and the art form within Odisha, but to touch upon some of the other places of significance as well, Dhaulagiri, right, or Dhauli as it's popularly known, that's where the site of some of Ashoka's edicts, right, is, also the famous stupa is also, right. Would you like to touch upon that too?
Dhaulagiri, Giri in Odia means a mountain, as a hill maybe. So Dhaulagiri is a Buddhist monument which is present nearby the river Daya, as I was mentioning earlier. So that's the site where it is supposed that the Kalinga war was fought.
Yep.
And as well, Dhaulagiri has a very, very old inscription present from the Ashokan times. So people or the historians got to know about the significance of this particular place. So Dhaulagiri sits on the top of a mountain, and actually you can see the city of Bhubaneswar, a bit of Bhubaneswar from there, and the river Daya flowing behind it. And it is an extremely beautiful and in a dense green atmosphere the site is located. As well as in the recent times, the government has tried renovating it by putting a musical show there and a light show each evening. So when you go for the evening show there, I think that's for 45 minutes to 1 hour, you get to see maybe a light and a art show being presented on the walls or on the entire structure of Dhaulagiri. So I would again like to mention that there are 3 famous giris which are present in Bhubaneswar. One is the Dhaulagiri, which we just mentioned, which is a Buddhist specific monument, and the other 2 are called as the Udayagiri and the Khandagiri. So these 2 important places again resemble both to the Buddhist and the Jainism cultures or the Jainism religions, and they are very, very important significant sites because they have again several inscriptions, and the particular place architecture resembles to the monks where they used to practice or do the sadhanas. So those are rock cut basically. So if you go there, you can see 2 different hills, I would say, not mountains, present opposite to each other. So the one is the Udayagiri and the other is the Khandagiri. As well as these particular spots have several inscriptions which are related to the olden Khadabila times. Khadabila was one of the very famous rulers from the state of Utkala or historical Odisha. So you can find several inscriptions present in this particular sites as well, I would like to mention.
Yeah, apparently there is about 18 caves in Udayagiri and about 15 caves in Khandagiri, and like you mentioned, right, it dates back to I think it's the times of the Khadavela, like you said, right? So there's, I guess, the first to the second century BC. So these were residential complexes for the more Jainist monks, is what I believe. So very, very significant, and somewhat similar to if the listeners, or if you've seen like the rock cut temples and the caves in Ellora, Ajanta Ellora, right? Something to that. Not as huge, but again very significant in terms of the kind of inscriptions they have, and very famous like rock carvings as well within these caves that are there. So
true.
The other thing of importance, that historical importance, that I also saw up was the Shishupal Garh, right? The ancient city. Would you like to speak about that too?
So Shishupal Garh was not known or popular before, as it is excavated not a long time ago. So it seems historically Bhubaneswar itself is an historical place though, but this is an historical city, not as big or as scalable like Hampi in Karnataka or any other places in India. But this is one of those cities in India which is supposed to be from the 1st or 2nd BC again. So this has an totally I would say exclusive amount of knowledge to give for the historians about how old our country's history really is. So day by day, newer excavations and newer things have been discovered at this particular place called Shishupal Garh, as well as Shishupal Garh is told to be one of the important learning centers in the historical India. I would like to say it was not like Nalanda and Bihar's in like that scale maybe, but yes, definitely it was one of the important learning centers in ancient India, I would like to say.
Yeah, definitely, and very different also, the excavations that have been discovered there or found there, like Ayush mentioned. Initially, a small part of it was kind of excavated in 1948, but the majority of the portion that was later discovered was as recent as 2005. So a lot of stuff has been discovered. There's a lot of fortifications. Again, not huge, but provide a very different perspective of how cities or like townships were built back in the day. And other places of interest, perhaps in the modern city, if you may want to call.
Yes. So the modern city, as I would like to mention, in the present time is known as in smart city. So as recently it has been included as the first city in India to be converted into the smart city plan. And the most important places in the modern city of Bhubaneswar would be definitely the Odisha State Museum, which is a huge museum. I think it would take a complete day to have a detailed tour of the entire building or the entire structure of the Odisha State Museum, where one can find several inscriptions and several different I would say excavated artifacts present inside the museum. And there is a very special museum present in Bhubaneswar. I think you would not find it in other cities of India, called as the Tribal Museum. So it has not been established long time ago, but yes, it has been established by the initiative from the government of Odisha and the Odisha Tourism, where one can get to see, so you would get to see and feel the different tribes, how they live, how they have their houses, how is their food, what weapons do they use, because they are jungle dwellers. So you can get to see that and get a touch of that in the Tribal Museum of Bhubaneswar. So these are two important museums, and a very recent and a modern museum which has been established is called as a Kala Bhumi. So that's again a museum which showcases the different art forms of Orissa, right from Patachitra to the different saris which is present, or the different silks which are available in the state. Apart from that, you would get to see beautifully decorated rathas. Ratha is something which is significant to each and every temple in Orissa. And the famous Ratha Yatra of Puri, the exact replicas, not that huge obviously, but a miniature replica of the exact Ratha which is present in the Puri temple during the Rath Yatra in July has been put in in the particular crafts museum or the Kala Bhumi. And the significance of this particular museum is on specific occasions and weekends they organize and they showcase different art forms like Odissi, Gotipu Nritya, that is another very famous dance from the Orissa, then Sambalpuri dance which is from Western Odisha. So they showcase different forms of art, music in that particular museum. There is an open art theater and an open art auditorium where you can typically do your art and craft related to Odisha, like from the bronze craftery or making different potteries, and you can as well get a feel and touch of the arts and the music or the dance forms of Odisha.
Absolutely. And even for nature or wildlife lovers, there is that option too. And popular Nandakanan, is that what how do you pronounce that? The zoo?
It is called as Nandana. So Kanan is something which is like a one or in forest or in a garden kind of in presence. Like this particular place, Nandan Kanan, is very, very important and very well known because it was I think it was the first zoo in India wherein white tiger was born. Right. So the white tiger in India has actually come from, again, that's a proud thing to say, it has actually come from Bhubaneswar's Nandan Kanan. So the breeding work of the white tigers is and the restoration and the rehabilitation is taken care in utmost good presence in the particular zoo. And I would like to say there is another important place called Ekamra 1, I guess so. And there is another important elephant sanctuary called as the Chandaka Elephant Sanctuary, very near to Bhubaneswar. So one can as well go and interact with the nature in Bhubaneswar, and you do not really need to go far. It's all just presence in the periphery of the city.
Yeah, the great thing is in terms of diversity, right? So many different things, like we said, right from the history to the culture to the art to your museums to right now we are touching upon wildlife as well. There's so many different things to do within Bhubaneswar and Odisha, and as I said, we are only scratching the surface at the moment. We haven't even gone deep into it. So anything from extended weekend itinerary to itinerary that lasts over a week and perhaps more is what one can indulge in. But I'd like to thank you a lot, Ayush, for taking us through this in a very detailed fashion, giving us backstories and important historical references as well to help us understand the meaning of this better. What's the best way of exploring this, and what is the best time that you would suggest one visit Bhubaneswar?
Odisha is a very humid and a hot state. So I would recommend everyone and suggest everyone to visit in the months of winters, specifically from November to January. I would say that's the most pleasant time to visit the coastal part of Odisha specifically. And Odisha is such a state which is not just the beaches, I would say. If we have to cover Odisha, it has mountains, it has valleys, it has rivers, it has again mountainous ranges of the Eastern Ghats, jungles, and lakes specifically, lakes. So I think the overall best period would be to go in the months of December and January, apart from November. And if someone would really like to visit Odisha for seeing its Rath Yatra, you can go in the months of visit in the months of July, when the annual procession takes.
Brilliant. And specifically to Bhubaneswar, I know we were discussing this briefly before we began recording. There is a lot of heritage tours as well one can indulge in, right? If one is short in time.
Yes, so I would recommend everyone, Saif, to definitely go for the activity which is called as the Ekamra walks, and they would specifically take you to the old part of the Bhubaneswar, which is called as the heritage walk of the heritage part of the Bhubaneswar. So I think it starts from, again, they will cover the Lingaraj, they will cover the Rajarani, the Mukteshwara temple, and you can get a gist and a brief about Bhubaneswar, and obviously you will get to meet a lot of exciting people there. Like I met you, Saif, in an heritage walk as well. So that's how I know you.
I think, as I said, keep repeating myself, but there's no dearth of different things one can do in Odisha and Bhubaneswar specifically, like we've discussed over the past few minutes. And I'd like to thank you, Ayush. Thank you so much for very patiently walking us through this really gem of India, which is I would say sadly very, very underrepresented, right? Even in the pop culture or the media or wherever it is, it's not represented enough. And this is our little effort from Musafir Stories. Yeah, go on, Ayush.
So I would like to specifically thank you, Saif, and your team who have taken this into consideration. And I'm really happy I could present a little part of my state, Odisha. I request everyone to not only see the cyclones of Odisha in the news, but yes, see the temples, see the beaches. You have lot to explore in Odisha, right from the wildlife to the art and craft or the temple or the architecture. So do visit, and I can guarantee that it will be a wonderful and a memorable journey and a trip for you all.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. The soul of incredible India. Thank you so much, Ayush. We look forward to seeing more of your pictures. We'll link your Instagram profile as well so that people can look at it, but more posts as well about Bhubaneswar and about Odisha. Thank you for taking us on this wonderful journey. That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Audioboom, Savan, Pocket Casts, Castbox, Stitcher, or any other podcasting app available on iOS or Android. Please do leave us a review on iTunes. It goes a long way in the show's discoverability. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or, if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com or visit our website at www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of each episode. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.